Lucky to Be Here is a podcast that showcases the lives and experiences of those who took the leap to build their lives and careers across countries. They share their stories, lessons, and advice to show us what is possible and what it takes to be an international student and professional. Because there is a lot that goes into building your own path one day at a time. We're more than just lucky to be here. I'm your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal, and I know what it takes because I have been there myself. Now, I coach and mentor international graduate students and professionals navigating life and career transitions across industries and countries through my company, AGB Services LLC. To learn more about how I can help you move from doubt and overwhelm to taking action with clarity and confidence, visit agbservicesllc.com. Stay until the end of the episode for a special treat too. Welcome to Lucky to Be Here. I am really glad you are. Today, I am so excited and very energized to welcome Francia to Lucky to Be Here. Francia is an entertainment attorney by day and a multi-hyphenate artist away from the desk. Singer-Songwriter, actor, model, TV host, voice actor, dancer, and yogi. Francia and I had the pleasure to meet each other as part of the storytelling charla that happened in 2025 at the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. And I am thrilled to have this conversation and share his story. Welcome to Lucky to Be Here, Francia.
Hello, I am feeling certainly lucky to be here indeed. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's such a pleasure. Now, I have the suspicion that we could go for hours with our discussion. So for those of our listeners who have not met you yet, what's your story?
Wow. So I am Francia. I was born in Venezuela in 1988 to a huge, beautiful family of African descent. I think my life's journey is to figure out where in Africa my ancestors come from, but I feel a deep connection to the continent and I've had the opportunity to live there too. I immigrated to the US when I was 14 years old. I came to Miami Beach, Florida, where I am currently. I went to undergrad and law school in New York and spent my formative years in the East Coast, New York, Washington, D.C. But I'm really shaped by the opportunities to live in other countries as well, and I call them inflection points. Some of them came through schooling, some of them came through my jobs, but they have been super important in nourishing me as a person. So certainly moving to the States as a 15-year-old was huge, but then I keep moving. I moved to Florence, Italy as a freshman for about a year, which is a pretty unconventional way to start your college education. Then I moved to Brazil for a summer as a summer intern in law school, and that really shaped me. Brazilian culture really resonated with my soul. Then I moved again to South Africa during the COVID pandemic for about close to 2 years, and that also had a profound impact on me. So I think my story is a collection of micro stories that unfold all over the world, and it really informs how I view the world, how I connect to other people, and always having something to relate to based on these experiences around the world.
Thank you for sharing that. And as you're describing this, the word that comes to my mind, both in terms of, the travels, but also knowing a little bit more about your story and, the path that you have taken even professionally, the word that comes to my mind is homecoming.
I love that. I love that.
So in that, like going, in that direction, um, what do you recall of that first experience of, moving to a different country at age 15, such formative time in your life, um, that, got this process started for you?
Wow. What I recall, the first thing that I recall is escaping from trauma. So my
Mhm.
parents had just divorced, and us coming was an opportunity to start fresh, to start anew, to rebuild our lives. And I very much strive to move past what was going back home. And so I just doubled down in school. I became super active in school in extracurriculars, was in marching band and pretty much every music ensemble possible. Those friendships, they were very grounding for me. And even my band director became as a sort of second father figure. He resembled my father, and then he believed in me so much that he gave me the understanding that I could achieve things in the US. And my teachers became my second family too. And so I just really worried about first learning English as soon as I could, and then excelling as a way to really escape from everything else that was happening. So my first arrival was characterized by hunger, hunger to go to a really good school, hunger to make myself known, to really explore what I had to offer. And homecoming is particularly important because we performed a lot at homecoming games. And homecoming became sort of like a celebration of sorts. And I love that you chose that word because as I travel and as I find new homes, each of these new homes becomes a homecoming of sorts. The biggest one for sure, Africa, was
Hmm.
sort of like, oh, I belong here. It was like a big aha moment of like, I feel so grounded here. But I also feel really grounded in Asia, in Southeast Asia and in India. Like I just feel a really strong connection there. But what I found that as I traveled and I had this hunger to travel more and more and more, the biggest homecoming has been coming home to my own body. And that's where I'm at now, where I feel like a deep connection to my body through my yoga practice, through my meditation practice. And I feel that no matter where I am, I'm always home because I'm home with me.
Yeah. And it resonates in multiple ways. I will say also, I don't want to take credit for the seed of the homecoming word in particular. I think this is a great time to mention someone who has been tremendously influential for me in exploring these themes has been Dr. Thema Bryan, who has the book Homecoming.
Wow.
A book I highly recommend, and where she also makes a lot of emphasis in throughout her work about joy and like art and dance and music and like coming to oneself. And so I think that in I can see those parallels and those connections as we are exploring your story as well. And one of the things that it's sometimes hard to navigate when we are in those processes is adjusting or adapting to the different environments, right? Like this push and pull between like finding home within and just like the grounding, but also responding to everything around us, especially as we are growing older. And so you've mentioned in the past a little bit about your experiences, like with English as a second language. So tell me a little bit more about in during that time in particular how like pour yourself into the work and the studying, which is something that resonates with a lot of us. Because I think culturally also we tend to escape through workaholism in some ways.
Yes, 100%.
Um, and so, what was that like when you were, like in that mindset of escaping from what had been happening while also, like the challenges that you might have faced adapting to this new environment?
Yeah, so as I hear you, what's coming up for me is an ability I didn't know I was developing right at 15 years old, or probably prior to that, which is of looking at structures and breaking them down and seeing how I can navigate them. And for me, the school infrastructure was a big organization of sorts that I wanted to break down and see how does one climb this ladder? How does one excel within these parameters? And one of them was a ceiling that I felt like I had right away, which was being an ESL student. I felt below water. I felt even like within the class structure of classes and merit, it felt like below regular classes. And so I knew immediately that if I wanted to thrive, I had to get out from that sort of glass ceiling. I had to shatter that ceiling. And so I came up with a plan.
Hmm.
which was to visit the head of the ESL program every morning before school started and ask her to see if there was a way I can test out of the program. Not that my English was at that level, but I was sort of like really courageous and saying and I just asked, please test me, please test me. And what I figured out really early was that there was no incentive to get students out of the ESL program because that meant the program might get defunded or the funding would be in peril. And so once I figured that structure, that emboldened me even more so because I just saw right through it and I wanted out. I didn't want to become a victim of this numbers game. And eventually I succeeded. She took me out of, she allowed me to test and I tested out. And then I had the next, threshold was how does one get into the most exclusive clubs within the school? And one of them was the Scholars Academy. It was only selected for high achieving students, and they had access to the best teachers who were the heads of each department, who then gave you good letters of recommendation for college, and these students were the most coveted, the most highly intelligent students. And I'm like, I need to establish a new campaign to get into this program because a lot of these programs, these students came from gifted programs, which are determined by the time you're a child. So they already were grandfathered in, and it was very difficult to get into it as a sophomore. So my new plan was to do the same thing I did with the ESL coordinator, but with the head of the Scholars Academy department. I would go to his office. His name was Dr. Page. And I would just share with Dr. Page, my background and just advocate for myself. I guess that's where the vein of being a lawyer came through in advocacy, because I had to advocate for myself. My mother was working. She couldn't come to the school and advocate for me. I had to do it for myself. And I convinced him, and I was able to get into this very exclusive club. And so as a sophomore, after, all first year or half of my first year, I was in ESL. By second year, I was taking honors English with the head of the English department and memorizing soliloquies and memorizing monologues from Shakespeare and really being challenged, in this way and prepping for AP advanced placement courses. And it was wonderful because then I felt more challenged. And all of a sudden, my colleagues had the same hunger that I had. And that allowed me to thrive. And eventually, I graduated from the program and got into the school of my dreams, which was New York University. And I ended up going there. So it's been really coming to the States has been about what is the system? How do I break it down? And how do I advocate for myself? No one else is going to do it for me. Very early on, I understood you're the CEO of your journey. If you want to go to a good school, no one's going to serve it on a silver platter. In fact, my advisor before the Scholars Academy, she felt like I was just too ambitious and that I should just lower my standards. And it wasn't until I got into this program where folks were talking about going out of state for college or even talking about college, period. And that's where I felt like I belonged.
Yeah. Uh, One thing that like you're describing as part of your story that I think is so important to highlight is like on one hand there is like that drive, that hunger, that persistence and consistency of you being like, this is what I need to do. Um, the awareness and the intelligence of like figuring it out, because like, let's not forget, like you're a 15, 16-year old who's like figuring out what the game is like so that you can like game it through advocacy. So that, is something very much to praise. And there is this other side that I think that, we often do not talk about or kind of like leave behind because we want to believe in meritocracy and all of
My
these
God,
other ideals. And it's the fact that, like it wasn't just that you had to be book smart. You had to be smart about the system and know what system you were interacting with so that you could play that game.
100%. And within that, it's realizing that these systems are made up of people, and these people are gatekeepers. And in order for gatekeepers to open the door for you, they have to like you. And so realizing within myself that There was one thing that was super disarming, and there was one thing that opened many doors, which was smiling.
Mm-hmm.
Once I realized the power of my smile, I sort of weaponized it and used it as a tool and just smiled and charmed my way through every place possible. And once you realize that gatekeepers want attention and they want to feel like they matter and they want to feel like you know your place and that you understand the whole organizational chart. And so, in knowing how to not step on people's feet so that they're more likely to help you, all that I learned in high school, and that understanding further beyond high school and in the working world, and especially in corporate America, that your network, it is
Mm-hmm.
really your net worth,
Mm-hmm.
and that jobs are obtained by who knows you, not by who you know. You may know a lot of people, but if they don't know you and what
Mm-hmm.
your capabilities are and what you are about, they may not recommend you. And sometimes, like you put it so beautifully, meritocracy, it's it's really a mirage. It's really that's what they sell us in the advertising book of America, but it's really about how you leverage the power and how you figure out your way around this big thing that is power.
Yeah. And how you find yours, right? Like you were saying,
Ooh,
the power of your smile. And also, because, as you're describing it, part of what comes to mind is I know, we both have encountered, and a lot of people have encountered those mentors or advisors who maybe, like you were saying in your case, right? Like they were like, well, manage your expectations. This might not be realistic. And so, then you find yourself in that struggle of like, but if I have this dream and I have this drive, like, where do I go with it? Right. And for a lot of people, they might take that at face value and be like, you know what, they're right. Like, that's it. And then some of us are just, it's like, no, we will find the way, for better or for worse. And so that kind of like constant negotiation between where the locus of power is outside of us and where it's within us.
oh my God, 100%. It is a negotiation for sure.
Hmm. In that negotiation, so like you successfully found your way into your dream school, and then you spend the first full year of it in Italy. Tell me more about what that was like.
Oh my goodness. So, I work so hard to get into the school and we do all the things that we have to do. We go through all the funnels and we collect all the gold stars. And then I applied to NYU and my admission letter said, "Welcome to NYU freshman year in Florence, Italy." I did not apply to this program. I did not know this program existed. And nowhere in my application had I really conveyed love or interest in Italy. Interestingly enough, in Venezuela, my next door neighbor was from Sicily, and she had started teaching me Italian since I was 6 years old, unbeknownst to my mother. And when she figured out that I was picking it up, she had a meeting with my mom and she said, "Hey, I think Cesar would really benefit from being enrolled in my daughter's school. Would you be open for me taking you to the school for you to see it and see, if we can get him in?" Sure enough, she took me to the school with my mom. She had me test there. There I had an advocate. There I had somebody to vouch for me. And there we have to add the layer of class and the layer of race because at the school it was mostly children of Europeans. Um, Very few, if none, Black students or students of lower strata. And I come from a family that comes from very humble beginnings, from the outskirts of the city, from the favelas, from the barrios. And my grandparents come from the coastal cities, and they had to walk for days to make it to the capital to then live in the city. It's from being, hombres y mujeres de campo
Hmm.
to be city people. And so she vouched for me. she gave the stamp of approval, and her daughters had graduated from these schools and were great students, and she believed that I could be a great student there too. And she was the one of the first adults to really see something in me and invest in me. And I'm getting so emotional already. And that changed everything because years after, I had this knowledge of Italian and I'm sent to Italy for the first time in Europe. And I was able to thrive there because I had a seed of the language and I was able to just dive right in. I bypassed the initial Italian courses that freshmen were taking and I started taking advanced Italian. And then I even had an opportunity to take a one-on-one class with the head of the Italian department,
Hmm.
which was sort of like another mentorship of sorts. And because I grew up around the elderly, like older people than me, my siblings were 20 years ahead of me. By the time I was born, my sister was 20. And so I've always been surrounded by adults. And I find comfort in being with folks that are elder and older than me. I was able to make friends with intergenerationally. Like this woman, my neighbor, was my friend. She was my neighbor, my friend, and we spent a lot of time together. And she brought me all over, and she felt pride in sort of sharing that. Oh, this is mi vecinito, conócelo, and that was so instrumental because I've always been able to navigate all of these environments because I had that since I was a child. So being in Florence was a first inflection point, right? Here I am as a freshman. My mom said, "But you're already an international student. Why you want to be even international within the international context?" It didn't really make sense for her. But it was important for me to do it because I loved Italian. Italian was um, the first seed of you're a world citizen. And if you
Hmm.
learn a language, you're not just learning words, you're learning a way of viewing the world. You're learning you're seeing the world through a new set of eyes. And sure enough, Italy changed my life. I thought I wanted to become a doctor when I applied to college. And when I was there, I said, no, I want to be a man of the world. I want to study politics and languages and the arts and sciences and the social sciences. And it really gave me a new way of exploring what my interests were. And I met friends for a lifetime. Imagine 100 freshmen living in a beautiful villa, walking through an olive like valley to get to class.
Hmm.
And I worked at an art gallery within the school. I was the first freshman to be allowed to work at an art gallery and to give tours and to learn about this whole beautiful collection and to know it like the back of my hand and know where this painting came from and just guide dignitaries that came to visit the school. I met so many really important folks that then came into my life later on because I had met them there. Then they came to help me later on in my college career. So it was all beautifully architected, and I just was very lucky to start there.
And there is a parallel that I am seeing in some ways between that experience of, being an ESL student in the US and then on the flip side, feeling so empowered in your experience in Italy.
Wow.
And I am not surprised that you feel emotional, remembering your neighbor as, like your first sponsor if you
Yes.
want it. Um because there is something to be said about the power of those people who early on see our potential and what we're made of and advocate for us in a way that then turns into our own self advocacy.
Wow. So beautifully said. Yes. 100%. And in Italy, I met future sponsors. I met a dean that came to visit. I gave her a tour. And when I came back to the US, she became my sponsor. She was the person who nominated me to every program, internship, award that she could think of. And these things were so crucial for me to apply for law school and for graduate school. I also met the head of the admissions ambassadors program, who by the time I arrived to New York said, you need to apply to become an admissions ambassador. And that was my first job. I ate because I had this job on campus job giving tours. And so So important to meet those people.
Yeah. Uh, what I am curious about is, what was that like when you came back to the US to complete your degree after, especially because what I am hearing from this experience in this year in Italy is that you were able to reconnect emotionally with a part of you that was bringing you a little bit closer to home. But there is also, anyone who knows you knows how much art like shapes who you are. And so what I'm hearing is like there are those threads of, okay, like there is more art coming this way, almost like a preview of what's ahead.
100%. Coming back was more of that line that you identified about self-advocacy. I didn't waste any time when I arrived in New York to make moves and to take advantage of being in a city like that. So I remember during orientation week coming back as a sophomore, I had already had an internship lined up with Human Rights Watch. At that point, I was thinking I want to be a human rights advocate. I want to do development work. And I remember two of my friends, I said, hey, can you walk with me? I need to figure out where my internship is. And we're walking along Fifth Avenue, Fifth Avenue, Fifth Avenue for a while. Eventually, we reach the Empire State Building. And it turned out that the Human Rights Watch office was at the Empire State Building, and that was going to be my office. And it was just such an incredible feeling of being like, I just landed here 3 days ago and I have a job at the Empire State Building. What's going on? And that really was characterized the rest of my years there. Like New York has a way of really empowering you. And if you are ambitious, and I know it sounds cliche, but I told my mom, like if I could make it in New York, I can make it anywhere. And literally it became true because becoming savvy in New York and navigating New York with how relentless it is and how tough it can be, you can really make it anywhere. And so coming back was about utilizing every opportunity and squeezing the university dry. Every opportunity to go abroad and do a volunteer service trip, or to join a club, or to join an organization, or to get internships under my belt, to get part time jobs. At some point, I had 4 jobs to be able to live, to eat, and to afford my books and everything, but also to get as much experience as I could. Um, and art was always sprinkled throughout, but my intention at that time was just to be smart. I wanted to be seen and respected as someone who's smart. And that was such a driving force for me. I didn't feel smart. Even after all of these things, and the more I learned, the dumber I felt I was, because
Mhm.
you start discovering like, oh, there's so much more. I'm just barely scratching the surface here. And it could be a dead end because you never stop learning. So once I understood that, listen, there is not an end point to learning. All you got to do is be a student forever, a student of life, a student of yourself, a student of the world. And that's something that I took with me. And that's something that I think all of us, whether we're immigrating to a new country or we're staying within our same country, we ought to be students of and be curious and always read the fine print and beyond and stay constantly learning. So I didn't find art in the way that I'm exhibiting it now
Mhm.
until later on. But I was always inspired by the museums in New
Mhm.
York, the artistic performances, the concerts. I mean, NYU has Tisch School of the Arts, so my peers themselves have become Hollywood stars, Broadway stars, and I was just surrounded by that all around.
Yeah. And one thing that I want to highlight of what you're sharing, it's basically reinforcing the message that you share about the curiosity being the driving force, while also pairing it up with the sense of enoughness, right? Because I think that that is something, going back to what we were talking about, how a lot of us cope through workaholism, including, studying and studying nonstop. There is also something to be said about approaching life with the curiosity of a student, while also knowing that there's always going to be some other external metric of what smart looks like or not that may or may not resonate with you, and that is okay. And it feels like a lifelong process of learning and unlearning that too, because so many of us have been very much like paying attention to, okay, what are the games that we are playing? Who sets the markers for success? Do they resonate with us? Well, maybe that doesn't matter right now. And so we keep going, and then we hit our heads against the wall. And then we're like, oh, okay, let me find out who I am now.
Mm. 100%. And then realizing that being book smart does not mean you are street smart or
Hmm.
savvy in the ways of the world. And that has tremendous value because I realized this in college, in high school, that I was not necessarily the greatest book smart person, but I was always going to figure it out. And that I had so much more to offer than, thank God, admissions looks into your extracurriculars and your volunteer work and your passions outside of college, because that really paints the full picture for me, because I'm just passionate about so many things that, yes, I devoted myself to my studies, but I was also heavily involved. Even in law school, by the time I got to law school, I found my most I found my tribe and my family in my extracurriculars, and that involvement kept me sane, even if it interceded and interrupted being, a bookworm, which you ought to be. You're reading 150 pages a day, but having these outside interests really balances me out, you know.
Yeah. That definitely resonates with me. That it was an ongoing conversation growing up of, like I was too distracted, quote unquote. And then, like during grad school, improv theater was a thing that, remained my balance, and the thing that has since kind of like sparked all the other creative permissions that I've given myself. And let's move a little bit forward into, like you continue this journey of, figuring things out and like moving forward and really building your career in, many like traditional ways. And some of the accolades and spaces and rooms that you've been in, are the top of the world, like literally. Um, so what is going through your mind as you're, reaching those spaces and those milestones?
Wow, what a deep, beautiful question. I think I didn't have the ability to be as reflective as I am now when I was going through it. It felt like a race. It felt like momentum. When you're in the thick of it, you just keep building. And I didn't necessarily take stock of what was happening, of the places that I was in. Um, I was just in many ways surviving while thriving, um, and just, trying to be invited again and be keep getting invited. That was very much like the mission of like, do all the right things, uh, uh, act according to the codes, the social codes, and the codes that I picked up on, and just mirror that, such that you're not um, asked out and that you're invited back. And also, that was a dead end because there's no in a black hole, because there is no ending. What the prize for doing well? It's a gold star and more work.
Hmm.
It never actually ends. And so at some point you have to figure out what are your boundaries and what is too much and where do you actually want to be. And that has been my adult life, about understanding that I'm not really meant to be liked by everyone. My biggest mission before was being liked, and being respected and being welcomed and being received and finding community. And wherever there was any semblance of love, there I was, even if that love wasn't necessarily real. any glimmer of love, I just stuck there and I said, pick me. Um, and later in life, it's a realization of not everyone loves you, and that's okay. That doesn't mean they're bad people or that you don't have something to offer. You're still enough, and you don't necessarily have to be loved by everyone. Your tribe, the people that really resonate with you, are the ones that should be there. The people who ignite something in you and whom you ignite something in, that's it. That's the real test of a relationship that's true and accurate. Sometimes you become friends with people because you're going through the same hardship or going through the same program, and I'm sure you encounter that during your
Mhm.
PhD. Like you there's a lot of trauma bonding that happens where you're pursuing something like a PhD or going through being an associate at a big corporate law firm and staying until 4 in the morning filing a brief. That's not to say that you're not compatible or meant to be friends, but you're friends of proximity,
Mhm.
and that's okay. But you ought to find your people, and you ought to find the people who are actually connected and aligned value wise, not just based on your objectives and your ambitions at that time.
Yeah. And what do you feel has been the catalyst for you to get started in that process of reflection and redirection?
Encountering meditation and like really and falling in love with self exploration and inner work and practices that are healing and practices that allow you to look back and teach you how to be reflective over your journey so that your future is more conscientious, more thoughtful. um, I went to a 10-day silent meditation retreat in Vietnam right before COVID 2019. And when I came out of that retreat, two things were immediate results of it. One was calling my father and having some sort of forgiveness and reconciliation with him after 13 years of not speaking with him. And two, quitting my legal job. I had been an associate at a big corporate law firm for about 7 years at that point, and it was not very healthy of an environment in many ways. It was really well compensated, and in your resume, it looks great. And for your family members, they're so proud. Your nephew, your son is your cousin, your brother is a lawyer, like a big deal lawyer in New York that travels the world. But internally, nobody asked, "How are you feeling? How does it feel to carry that burden? How does it feel to go to work every day?" And I carried it from the outside really well. I was still smiling. I smiled too much. I smiled almost as a reflex. I smiled as a way to cope.
Mhm.
But behind that, there was exhaustion, there was huge imposter syndrome, and burnout. And so the retreat really allowed me to take a step back and just listen, just to be silent without any writing objects or anything to distract you from your own voice. It could be very confronting, it could be very challenging, but also illuminating. So I came out knowing a change is inevitable, and you are the one who has to make the change. Nobody's gonna say, "Hey, you look unwell," or "I know there's something beneath that." I have to be the one to recognize that there has to be more to life than writing emails, and that collecting these gold stars that you're not taking with you when you pass on.
Yeah. And in a way is, like no amount of external markers of being in the top of the on the top of the world will take you as inward into the depth of your soul.
So beautifully said. I couldn't have said it better.
And so after that trip to Vietnam, you start, in that process of realization. And then COVID hits and it finds you in South Africa.
Yes, so I decided to take a vacation. One of my friends was in South Africa, and I decided to go visit her. And it's crazy because I only got to see her and her husband once because COVID really just started taking hold of the world, and the restrictions were really tough in South Africa. So I was at a beautiful Airbnb. I landed with a German family, expat that had lived in South Africa for a very long time, and they had this beautiful property with a pool, access to a small mountain that I climbed almost daily, a lake, beach, and I took my bicycle Magdalena, which is a folding bicycle that I take with me everywhere. I've been with her for 8 years, and the world stopped. I had already quit. I had some savings, and I just used this time as the perfect opportunity to go even more inward, to grow on my meditation practice, to finally do a yoga teacher training, which I had wanted to do for a while. And it was just a journey of exploration, of really finding my voice, literally and figuratively. And I found my singing voice. I found my voice as a beginner songwriter, and it just opened a brand new path for me, a path where a new vocation emerged in the arts, to be an artist, to be a conduit of expression, of art, of music. And that's been the journey that I've been on since COVID to the present day. I've been on a new exploration, which is, how do I become a rock star? What are the steps, to be a thoughtful rock star that whose main goal is not just to get famous, but whose main goal is to share the journey, to share the golden nuggets that have come from the journey, and to have my music reflect that. And so I'm at the stage now where my music is really reflecting my values. I have a new song coming out called Magdalena, which is about my bicycle. And it's really an ode to her and what she has meant in this journey. She has been the witness of my transformation. A lot of my ideas for songs come when I'm writing Magdalena. A lot of meditation happens when I'm writing. Manifestations, the most powerful manifestation was in South Africa. I'm writing in the middle of lockdown. I'm writing on a national park. It's completely empty because I snuck in, and I'm just writing, and I see the sun, and I just out loud ask the sun, Sun, I want to share the world about how much I've healed with Magdalena. And 2 weeks after, there was a mass email out from the company, Brompton Bicycles, to Brompton riders saying, hey, share any stories you might have with your Brompton. And I emailed, filled out the form, and shared, Magdalena changed my life. I lost 50 pounds. I'm writing songs. I quit my legal career. And I get an email back saying, we love your story. Can we jump on a Zoom? We jumped on a Zoom, and they offered to do a documentary on my experience and to fly a crew to South Africa. They sent a crew, and during lockdown, we shot a beautiful piece about this journey, and it's forever documented of how this transition happened. And we'll share the link with
Yes.
with your fans and with the listeners of the podcasts. And I was very lucky to be in South Africa. It felt like another homecoming, to be in the motherland, to be welcomed by nature, and to be able to co-manifest with the elements. I had not had that experience before. And now I truly feel that we are one with nature. We're just another manifestation of nature, and that we can co create with the sun, with the moon, with the cosmos, with everything that's around us already lives inside of us. And we're just nature with a consciousness and with a brain. That's it.
Yeah. And during that time, if I recall correctly, you also wrote your first album, Infinita.
I did, and this album really came from that reflection, and there were songs really dedicated to the closest things I had, which were my family, family members. For example, one of the songs from the album, Bolero Guarachero, uh, was born the day my favorite uncle passed, mi tío Carlos, and I felt his power and his voice really, really tell me, whisper in my ear, this song is a bolero, but it also has like urban reggaeton vibes because he loved his boleros. And but he also loved to dance, and he was 88 years old dancing reggaeton. And he said to me, I know this may not make sense for anybody, but this is really your contribution to music, is to make fusion and to do things that are unconventional. And so he gave me my aesthetic, my musical aesthetic, the day of his passing, along with a whole song that eventually became one of my favorite songs from the album. And when you have that direction, who cares if many producers said to me, I'm not comfortable doing that. That makes absolutely no sense musically, or you're breaking the rules of modern composition, somebody told me. And I said, well, arrest me. Like, sue me. Like, this came from the divine. Who am I to argue with the way this was transcribed? Like, I'm just a mere transcriber. I didn't come up with these lyrics. I don't come up with these rhythms or these melodies. I'm purely transcribing. That's all I'm doing. I'm just a scribe in this process.
Yeah. And what you're saying also is something that has a lot of artists over the years have kind of like felt that pull of being like, I am a medium, I'm a vehicle, I'm just channeling the message, and here it goes, and let's see who resonates with it. One thing that I want to ask you about is, for a lot of people, they might have met you as Cesar, and then you go into your journey of, like you called it in the charla, finding Frecuencia Francia, right?
Yes.
um and I am sure that there is the human element in all of us, that there is those moments where it's like, okay, this is undeniable, a spiritual pull that I cannot fight with. I'm just going to be the vehicle for it. But there is also the very human experience of like, I am terrified. What the heck am I doing? Especially after the many decades of, conditioning and learning and like thriving, or in some ways like thriving as survival, let's say. um what do you tell yourself when you find yourself in those moments of humanity?
Wow. I look for evidence of prior points where I've also been super scared. And all the evidence leads that even when you do it scared, there's always something powerful on the other side of your fear. And that's equally true before I stepped into the Supreme Court for the first time. That was so scary. Like, what is an immigrant doing working at the US Supreme Court? That made no sense. And yet that was the door that was open for me. Going to a big school, a big city like New York, I felt so minute. What am I doing in New York City? Like, I'm just a little ant in the sea of millions of people. Similarly, who am I to have these ambitions to become a singer and an artist and a Hollywood star? But who am I not to? And so all the evidence leads to my wildest ambitions are real, they're tangible, and they're possible. So I have to give myself permission. It's just a matter of time, discipline, and consistency. And that's what I just remind myself.
Yeah. And it is my gift to remind you that the more you do that, the more you also open that door for so many of us around you.
Thank you. And I forget it, and you'll forget it in the midst of it. But the evidence is there, and I just have to go back and excavate that evidence and know that there is beauty, there's power on the other side of your fear. And I speak to my fear and I tell it, don't paralyze me. I know you want to protect me, but let me go. I have big things to do. Just let me. And if I fail, so what? If nobody heard my first album, so what? The people that needed to hear it heard it, and I was one of them. And when I hear that album, I am reminded of the power of just trying. And I love trying. That's my biggest gift. I am going to try it. And the results are so powerful.
For what it's worth, multiple people have listened to that album, including myself this morning before this conversation.
Oh, that fills
And
my
those
heart.
and those who follow my newsletter have received it at some point as a recommendation as well. So, and
Wow,
we
that
will
means the
include
world.
the link in our show notes as well for anyone to listen to it.
Thank you. No, that means the absolute world. And the biggest gift from that album is that music doesn't die.
Hmm.
It would be my biggest legacy to have these songs. I will never bring these songs down, no matter how much I evolve, no matter how cooler my sound becomes, no matter how many great, Latin Grammy or Grammy winners I get to work with in the future, or no matter how many nominations or awards I win, that album is the most pure expression of someone who had something beautiful to say. And even if there were mistakes in composition, or I'm an immature songwriter, as many people try to tell me, there is incredible value in daring. And if it stands for something, it stands for dare to express. There could be no possible mistakes in your genuine expression, and art is so subjective, and art is really transformational, and I'm forever transformed by that album. And yes, I'm so happy that now I get to work with the geniuses, and that I sound cool, and that I've, I've I have a vocal coach who trains the most beautiful voices out in the market that I admire. My vocal coach is David Bisbal's vocal coach, and what a voice. And yes, I want to aim to get there. But in the meantime, I will continue sharing, and nobody will ever silence that.
You remind me that recently I came across Yo-Yo Ma saying that music is energy and
I
energy
just heard that
cannot be
yesterday. Oh
destroyed.
my God.
Hmm.
With Stephen Colbert, he was,
Yeah.
wow, I just heard that yesterday. That's so beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, it cannot be destroyed. And when I think of anything just as energy, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
good or bad, you learn that you're really an alchemist. And I just get to transform any energy that is sent in my direction, whether it is the the I forget, the monitoring spirits that
Mhm.
sometimes are looking at are you trying, and don't have the capacity to say, hey, I see you, or hey, you're inspiring me. They're just monitoring it and witnessing you. That is energy. It's not good or bad. And what I do with that energy is just alchemize it and transform it and play with it. And that's all we can do. I don't label it as anything other than monitor and spirit I talk to. But I utilize it. That's fodder for my creativity. That's fodder for me getting up and saying, there is more to share. My job is not done here. And even once I pass, it would just be energy transforming into something else. I love that you brought that up.
So before we go, how can people find you?
Yes, you can find me at Francia Canta on all platforms, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, or franciacanta.com. You can see my new music, my projects in acting and voice acting. There's a new series that came out on HBO Max where I play the voice of one of the leads, and you can hear me, you can feel me, you can witness it, and also you can connect with me. I respond to everyone on all the platforms, and I am so grateful for this conversation. I'm a crybaby, and you allowed me to just share, just unfiltered, just how it is.
I'm really grateful for you to be here today, Francia. I absolutely love this conversation. And, you know, if there is one parting message, is we talked about the power of your smile early on in your life, and sometimes how even like that was weaponized to, like move through the world. And there is also so much power in the homecoming that you've been experiencing and sharing with us through your art as well.
Thank you. This has been so powerful for me to engage in, and I will use this energy that you've given me into my songwriting, into my songs, into my creation. So you will be forever part of all the things that are going to come out of this conversation, which I know it's going to be art.
I look forward to dance and feel the joy through it.
Ashe. Thank you.
That is the end of today's episode. And as a thank you for making it this far, here is a special gift. You can use code LUCKY26 to get 20% off when you subscribe to my coaching membership, AGV Lab for Career Explorers. You can book your call to join it using the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Lucky to Be Here. I am your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening and leave us your review. You can also get our updates and resources for career development by subscribing to our weekly newsletter visiting agvservicesllc.com. See you next time.